My name is Serena Williams, and at 60 years old, I sit here in this quiet room above the old bookstore in Charlottesville, Virginia, with the faint scent of aged paper drifting up from below and the soft hum of rain against the window pane. And I can finally say it out loud. I was betrayed by every single person I ever loved. Not in small ways, not in the forgivable slips of human weakness, but in deep, calculated cuts that left me bleeding for decades. My sister, my husband, my childhood friend, even the man who promised to heal me, they all turned their backs, or worse, plunged the knife themselves. It wasn't just one night that broke me. It was a lifetime of shadows creeping closer until they swallowed everything. I've spent 34 years piecing myself back together, one shattered fragment at a time, and now, as the light fades outside and my hands tremble slightly holding this cup of chamomile tea, I'm ready to tell you everything. Not for pity, not for revenge, but because holding it in has been like carrying poison in my veins. Let me take you back, slowly, through the fog of memory, to where it all began. I was born Serena Marie Thompson on a cold March morning in 1951, in Petersburg, Virginia, to parents who loved us in their own distant way, but whose affection felt like sunlight through a cracked window, warm in spots, but mostly cold and uneven. My father, Harold, worked long hours at the textile mill, his hands calloused and his voice rough from years of shouting over machines. He came home smelling of sweat and machine oil, and on good days, he'd ruffle my hair and call me his little thinker because I preferred books to dolls. But on bad days, which were most, he'd slump into his armchair with a beer and stare at the wall, lost in some invisible war. My mother, Louise, was a seamstress, her fingers nimble but her heart guarded. She doted on my sister Alina, from the moment she was born 2 years later, brushing her red curls for hours, cooing over her sharp green eyes and freckled nose, telling her she was destined for greatness. I was the practical one, the steady one. Serena, stop daydreaming and help with dinner, she'd say, her tone sharp as her needles. I learned early that love was conditional, earned through quiet obedience, and Alina, with her laughter that filled rooms like music, always seemed to earn more. Elena's jealousy started small, like a seed buried in soil, but it grew twisted roots over the years. She was the beautiful one, the one teachers smiled at, the one boys followed home from school. But she hated that I was the smart one, the one who brought home straight A's and teachers' praises. Why do you always have to be so perfect? She'd hiss when we were alone in our shared bedroom, the air thick with the scent of our mother's lavender sachets hanging from the closet door. I'd shrug and bury my nose in a book, pretending it didn't hurt. Nora Thompson was my only refuge then, my childhood friend from down the street, a girl with wild brown hair and a gap-toothed grin who lived in a house even smaller than ours. Nora and I would escape to the woods behind our neighborhood, building forts from fallen branches and whispering secrets under the canopy of oaks. She was the one who made me feel seen, who laughed at my stories and held my hand when Elena stole my favorite dress or blamed me for her broken toys. She's just jealous because you're going places, Serena, Nora would say, her voice soft against the rustle of leaves. But even then, I felt the first cracks. Elena would watch us from the window, her eyes narrow, and I'd shiver without knowing why. As I entered my teens, the loneliness deepened like a slow-moving fog rolling in from the Appomattox River. Puberty hit Alina like a gift, turning her into a vision with curves and confidence, while I remained awkward, tall and gangly, with braids that never stayed neat and glasses that slipped down my nose. School was my escape, but even there, the wounds accumulated. Boys teased me for being bookish, and girls whispered about my plain clothes. Alina thrived on it, spreading rumors that I was stuck up or weird. One afternoon in 1966, when I was 15, I came home to find my diarrheen, my private sanctuary of poems and dreams torn to shreds on the kitchen table. Alina sat there smirking, our mother stirring soup at the stove. It was an accident, Alina said, her voice sweet as poison. Mother just sighed and told me to clean it up. That night, under the covers with a flashlight, I cried silent tears, the air heavy with the smell of rain-soaked earth from an earlier storm. Nora was my anchor. We'd meet at the old swing set in the park, pushing each other higher and higher, laughing until our stomachs hurt. "You're better than them, Serena," she'd say, her breath warm on my ear. But deep down, I felt unworthy, like a shadow next to Elena's light. It was during those teenage years that I first encountered Richard Hale, a name that would haunt me like a ghost in the attic. He was 18, a senior at the high school, with dark hair that fell over his eyes and a leather jacket that smelled of cigarettes and danger. I met him at a school dance I'd been dragged to by Nora, the gym lights dim and the air thick with sweat and cheap perfume. He approached me while I stood against the wall, nursing a cup of punch, and said, "You look like you'd rather be anywhere but here." His voice was low, gravelly, and for the first time, someone saw my loneliness. We talked for hours that night, about books and dreams, and he walked me home under a starless sky. But the red flags were there from the start: his possessiveness, the way his grip tightened on my arm when other boys looked my way. Alina noticed him immediately, flirting shamelessly, but Richard only had eyes for me, which made her jealousy burn hotter. "He's trouble, Serena," Nora warned one afternoon, as we sat by the river, the water murmuring over rocks. "His eyes are too hungry." I ignored her, craving the attention, but the fear crept in slowly, like dusk. Richard's temper flared in private, shouting over nothing, slamming doors. One night after a fight, he grabbed my wrist hard enough to bruise, the pain sharp as his apologies were swift. I hid it from everyone, even Nora, the shame like a stone in my stomach. By young adulthood, I was desperate to escape the suffocating air of home. I enrolled at Virginia Union University in 1970, majoring in elementary education, dreaming of a classroom where I could nurture little souls the way I wished mine had been. Nora went to community college nearby, our friendship a lifeline through letters and weekend visits. That's where I met Daniel Williams in the fall of 1972, in the university library, his hand brushing mine as we both reached for the last copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God. He let me have it, then followed me out into the rain with an umbrella, asking for coffee, with a smile that started slow and lit up his whole face. Daniel was everything Richard wasn't: gentle, thoughtful, with a laugh that warmed me from the inside. He was studying history, planning to teach, and our dates were long walks through campus, talking about dreams and justice and the world we wanted to build. But the red flags whispered even then: Daniel's occasional distant stares, like he was hiding something behind those soft brown eyes. Richard had disappeared after high school, or so I thought, but his shadow lingered in my nightmares. Alina visited once, sweeping in with her latest boyfriend, eyeing Daniel like a prize. "Be careful, sis," she said with a wink. "Men like him always have secrets." I laughed it off, but her words stuck like burrs. Our courtship was a whirlwind of stolen moments, the scent of autumn leaves as we picnicked by the James River, the taste of sweet tea on his lips. Daniel proposed in 1974, under the sugar maple we'd later plant in our yard, his voice trembling as he slipped the ring on my finger. Alina was my maid of honor, her smile tight, her hug cold. Nora cried happy tears, whispering, "You deserve this, Serena." We married in the small Baptist church where my parents had wed, the air filled with hymns and the faint smell of lilies. But on our wedding night, as Daniel held me close in our tiny apartment, I felt a flicker of Onisa's phone rang late, and he silenced it quickly, saying it was work. I pushed it away, focusing on our new life. We bought the house on Maplewood Lane in 1979, a cozy brick home with green shutters and a porch that creaked in the wind. Mrs. Margaret Collins, our 80-year-old neighbor with her lavender garden and kind eyes, welcomed us with a casserole, her voice frail but warm. "You two look like you were made for each other," she said, patting my hand. I believed her. Marriage brought joys and trials. We tried for children, but the miscarriages came like thieves in the night, 4 in total, each one carving a hollow in my heart. Daniel held me through the pain, his arms strong, his whispers soothing. "We'll grow our oaks, Rena," he'd say, echoing his promise. But work brought Anna Davis into our lives, a coworker at Fairmont Elementary, a woman with sharp features and sharper envy. She taught 4th grade, and from the start, she undermined me, spreading rumors about my incompetence, stealing credit for my lesson plans. "She's just insecure," Daniel said when I confided in him. But I saw the way she looked at him during school events, her eyes lingering too long. Mrs. Collins became my confidant, inviting me for tea in her living room, filled with doilies and the scent of fresh-baked cookies. "People like Anna are empty inside," she'd say, her hand on mine. Alina visited sporadically, her marriages failing one after another, her jealousy now a quiet simmer. "You're so lucky, Serena," she'd say, but her tone dripped acid. Daniel's secrets started small late nights at school, Unexplained receipts for flowers I never received. I found a hidden key in his drawer once, but he brushed it off as old junk. Nora drifted away, her own life busy with marriage and kids. Our letters fewer and fewer. The deep betrayal began in the spring of 1991, like a storm cloud on the horizon. I found the first letter in Daniel's briefcase and signed on plain paper. Speaking of our stolen moments and the life we deserve, my heart stopped. The room spinning, the air thick with the scent of his cologne still lingering on his jacket. "It's nothing," he said when I confronted him, his eyes avoiding mine. "Probably a student prank." But more came. Photos in the mail of Daniel with a woman I didn't recognize, her face blurred but her red hair unmistakable. Hidden money in a shoebox under the bed, thousands of dollars I couldn't account for, keys to an apartment I didn't know about. Anna's name popped up in his planner, circled in red. I confided in Mrs. Collins over tea, her living room cozy with the tick of her grandfather clock. "Men wander sometimes," she said gently, but her eyes held worry. Alina called more often, her voice sympathetic. "Leave him, Serena. You deserve better." But I clung to our life, the Sunday pot roasts, the Thursday bowling, the way he still called me Rena. Richard Hale's return was like a nightmare clawing its way back. In June, the phone calls started, heavy breathing, then hang-ups, noises on the porch at night, a creak in the still air. Mrs. Collins left notes with her casseroles. "Saw a tall man watching your house. Dear, be careful." I showed Daniel, but he dismissed it. Then one evening, as rain pattered against the windows, Richard knocked. He stood there, older, harder, his leather jacket worn, his eyes hungry. "Serena," he rasped, "I never forgot you." Daniel sent him away, but the confrontation lingered, a dark cloud. Alina came for dinner that week, her perfume overpowering, kissing Daniel on the cheek a beat too long. "Who was that man?" she asked innocently, but her eyes gleamed. I felt the web tightening, suspicions growing like weeds. The night everything broke was November 21st, 1991, a nor'easter raging outside, wind howling like lost souls, rain lashing the windows. Daniel and I sat by the fireplace, the air warm with wood smoke, Billie Holiday playing soft. He held my hand, his thumb tracing circles. "Whatever happens, Rena, remember, I love you." The doorbell rang. At 11:47 p.m., my heart pounded. Daniel opened it to Richard, gun in hand, eyes wild. "She's mine," he growled. Letters flew forged in my handwriting, begging Richard to save me from Daniel. Daniel's face crumpled and hurt. He lunged. The shot echoed. Blood bloomed on his shirt. Richard fled as Mrs. Collins called the police. I held Daniel as he died, his last words unfinished. The police investigation dragged like a nightmare. Detective Marcus Reed, a tall man with a gravel voice and kind eyes, took my statement in our blood-stained living room, the air still thick with gunpowder. "We'll find him," he promised. They caught Richard, but his ramblings led to Elleneller's hidden in her condo, her confession of forging them to break us. But deeper truths emerged. Daniel's affair with Anna, the hidden money from embezzlement, photos of him with Richard in the past. They were connected old friends, a shared secret from college. Nora called, her voice distant, admitting she'd known about Daniel's infidelity but stayed silent. My psychological unraveling was slow, a descent into shadows. For years, I didn't leave the house, ghosts whispering in every corner. Dr. Aaron Blake came weekly, his office smelling of coffee and books, teaching me to breathe through panic. "Betrayal isn't your fault," he said. But even he betrayed me, revealing sessions to Detective Reed, part of an investigation into my delusions. The final truth connected everything. Alina had orchestrated it all, but Daniel and Richard were partners in crime. Anna the mistress, Nora the informant who sold secrets for money. Mrs. Collins knew but said nothing. Dr. Blake was Alina's lover. The twist. I had buried a memory I'd known about Daniel's secrets, but chose silence. The betrayal was mutual. Now, at 60, I've survived the pain. The lesson: love is fragile. Guard it, but no betrayal comes from within too. Light wins, but only if you fight for it.